On June 22, 2024, Bill Bradney, Tim Inori, Jim and Rick Story ate at the Post Chicken and Beer restaurant at 5:45 p.m. The Post is in what used to be a carriage house at the Stanley Hotel. Like the hotel, the Post is adorned in a sheen of lustrous white. Inn sits east of the Stanley on the sprawling hilltop that offers spectacular views of mountains. Well-manicured grounds are appointed with lush green evergreens and towering pines. A small guardhouse precedes your approach to the Post. It costs $10 to park, though you'll be issued a $10 credit to present at the restaurant. Step inside and you're awash in things to see. On display on a wall overlooking the wrap-around bar is what appears to be the lower half of a taxidermied deer. Perhaps the deer was the victim of one of the resident ghosts. After dinner, Bill, Tim, Jim, and Rick participated in the Shining Tour at 10:10 p.m. The Shining Tour is an hour-long theatrical tour experience at the Stanley Hotel. It is an indoor-outdoor walking tour through the west side of the Stanley Hotel campus. A lot of Stephen King, a bit of history, and a whole lot of stories of the spirited variety. This tour includes a visit to the Shining Suite in the beautifully restored 1909 Caretaker's Cottage. On this tour, you will get the inside scoop on Colorado's most famous dog. You can snap a photo of the recreated bathroom and catch a glimpse of one of the axes from the filming of The Shining. Join us and dive into all the paranormal allure that the historic Stanley Hotel has to offer. In the fall of 1974, writer Stephen King and his wife stopped for the night at an old hotel overlooking the city. Once among the grandee dames of the West, the Stanley had fallen on hard times and was a ghost of its former Edwardian-era self. Upon arriving, the Kings learned the hotel was closing for the winter and only a skeleton crew remained. Nonetheless, the couple was checked into room 217, the presidential suite, as the only paying guests. That night, the author had a nightmare in which he saw his young son being chased down the hotel's long, empty corridors by a predatory, possessed fire hose. He woke drenched in sweat and stepped to the balcony to smoke a cigarette. By the time he stubbed it out, he'd worked out the bones of what would become his third novel and first bestseller, The Shining. King's nightmare turned out to be a sweet dream and breath of life for the historic landmark that served as inspiration for the fictional Overlook Hotel. The surge in spectrally motivated tourism after the book was published in 1977 still is going strong, thanks in part to a 1980 film adaptation directed by Stanley Kubrick and starring Jack Nicholson. Our first stop was the men's bar and smoking room called the Pinon Room, which did not allow women. This is the room where the famous writer Stephen King had his first vision for the story The Shining. He got the idea of the innkeeper speaking with the ghost bartender while he was sitting at the bar in this room having a nightcap. Also, during the time the Stanleys were here, this was the only room on the 144-acre grounds where you could drink and smoke. The Stanleys were part of the temperance movement and did not partake in such things, but they knew that they had to have a place for their guests who did. This was the purpose of the Pinon Room. There is another item that needs to be pointed out about the Pinon Room, and that is the flag that is hanging over the fireplace. The flag was donated in 2010 by Sergeant Michael Bergman. It does show some battle wear and stains and remnants of war. Sergeant Bergman came to spend some time in the area in hopes of healing and resting up, which he did. He eventually found himself on one of the day tours at the Stanley and learning of the patriotism of the Stanleys. He decided to donate the flag to the hotel. Each year, he returns for the tours and notices even more changes within the flag. If you look closely at it, you will notice a face. Some say that it is F.O. Stanley himself coming through on the flag to show his appreciation for the donation.
Yeah. Is that anything? Sure looks like it. It's getting some response.
Just 2 years after the hotel opened, Ms. Elizabeth Wilson was tending the rooms when a thunderstorm rolled through the mountains of Estes Park, wiping out all of the power in the Stanley Hotel. Going from room to room, the housekeepers carried lit candles to ignite the acetylene gas lamps. Wilson approached a room that unknowingly would become the focal point of mysterious activity for more than a century to come. Room 217. As she made her way in, the odorless gas connected with the flame of the candle, immediately igniting into a fiery eruption and blasting Elizabeth through the floor into the MacGregor dining room. Despite the intense explosion, Elizabeth survived, only suffering 2 broken ankles. Reportedly, the injured employees and guests were sent to a hospital in Longmont, although not much documentation of the patients exists. Even though Elizabeth walked away from her injuries in 1911, her ghost is said to still reside in the hotel. More specifically, in room 217. It has been rumored that in that room clothes are mysteriously folded or put away. It is said that Elizabeth was old-fashioned and proper, so when an unmarried couple comes to visit her, she will climb in bed between them throughout the night. Elizabeth Wilson's life is just as mysterious as her afterlife. Despite the years working at the hotel and the documentation of the explosion and hospital records, not one photo can be found of Ms. Elizabeth Wilson. The explosion sent the hotel spiraling into an era of spiritual activity. A majority of the haunts are known to occur on the 4th floor. From self-opening closets to the giggling and running children, this phantasmal floor of the hotel exhibits a lot of activity. The most notable by far is room 428, where a friendly cowboy often sits on the corner of the bed waiting to greet you. The grand stairway in the lobby has also been a huge site for seeing the apparitions of the hotel, a sort of vortex for the spirits to move from the main lobby all through the halls. One guest reported taking pictures of this brilliant staircase only to find a strange womanly figure standing at the top in the photos. In its nearly 115 years, the historic Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado has hosted everyone from Theodore Roosevelt to the Titanic's unsinkable Molly Brown, and more recently, author Stephen King. If the hotel's long, narrow hallways look creepily familiar, it may be because the Stanley is where King was inspired to write The Shining, a hotel haunting that director Stanley Kubrick turned into a horror classic. But the Stanley was also haunted by something else: decades of financial woes. It was in bankruptcy when hotel entrepreneur John Cullen found himself the latest in a long line of supposedly cursed proprietors to invest in. This creepy hotel. He knew he had to capitalize on the hotel's ghoulish reputation, so he fixed up Stephen King's actual room, number 217. You can now stay in it. And he built a hedge maze right out front, just like the one where Jack Nicholson's crazed caretaker finally met his frozen end. And in keeping with that frozen theme, Cullen got another idea. In 2022, he asked the mayor of Estes Park for permission to allow one very special guest to check in, a man who'd been frozen himself for 30-plus years. And she goes, "Cullen, you know, I've seen a lot of weird out of you in the last 25 years, but this reaches a new level of weird," he recalled. His name was Bredo Morstall. He died in Norway in 1989, but his remains ended up about an hour away from the Stanley, in Nederland, Colorado, unceremoniously laid to rest in a tough shed frozen stiff. Every 2 weeks for more than 3 decades, people like Brad Wickham have been rotating in and out, hauling more than 1,000 pounds of dry ice up the mountain, all to keep Grandpa tucked in for his eternal winter's nap. "From what I understand, he was a very kind gentleman," Wickham said. "You could just tell that he was the glue of the whole family. It's all an experiment in cryonics." Bredo's grandson, Tregve Bauge, lived here and believed that by keeping his grandfather frozen in the backyard, doctors of the future might one day be able to revive him. At the worst case, this is essentially a form of burial, but it's also for research, said James Arrowood, co-CEO and president of the nonprofit Alcor Life Extension Foundation in Scottsdale, Arizona, where hundreds of patients, as they call them, are patiently waiting, frozen in liquid nitrogen, not a box filled with dry ice in a tough shed. Morstel's grandson was forced to move back to Norway. He was deported for overstaying his visa, and he had to leave Grandpa behind. But Grandpa hasn't exactly been alone. Our own Bill Geist went to pay his respects in 2003. He learned Grandpa wasn't forgotten. He was being celebrated with an annual Frozen Dead Guy Festival, complete with a Frozen Dead Guy parade and events that included coffin races and a polar bear swim. Cullen notes, "It's almost like a frozen Burning Man, if that actually can be in one sentence." Frozen Dead Guy's days eventually became so popular, Nederland couldn't handle the crowds anymore. But its gallows humor fit the Stanley perfectly, so Cullen moved Frozen Dead Guy days here. He said, "It's a little humor, a little fun, little beer, little bit of attitude, but all in good spirit." But what's a Frozen Dead Guy festival without the Frozen Dead Guy? Cullen needed the festival's namesake, and Grandpa needed an upgrade. So, this past August, with his grandson's permission, Grandpa Breda was moved by a team from Alcor, driven to the Stanley's old ice house, removed from his aluminum casket, put in a sleeping bag, and then submerged headfirst in liquid nitrogen. We had to ask, what does he look like? "Damn good," said James Arrowood. "He looked better than embalmed people." He's now the centerpiece of a small exhibit at the Stanley on the science of cryonics, and he gets visitors every day. As for John Cullen, he sold the Stanley, but is proud of his ghostly legacy. After all, he linked a fictional Frozen Dead Guy to a real one. And he managed to find the perfect guest, one who never complains and will never check out.
This was fun.
Uh-huh.
It was a good story. It was a fun time, yeah. Where the hell are you? I'm here.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Why not? I might as well just get right with Jesus right now.
Well, that's creepy. What the heck is that? Blueberry pie with this. What? A blueberry pie with a freaking face? That's creepy as heck.
Oh.
Oh.
I really like that.
That is creepy.
Bunch of doors. No, I see a bunch of doors. You know what? If I saw something in here, y'all better get out of my way. Something will blow you all over.
Yeah, totally.
I know, right? What are you kidding me?
What happened?
What are you guys doing? Come here, look at this screen. What is it? What the hell? I'm like, get my face in what?
You go down your feet. You get through on. Okay, sweet.
Alright, let's
They see.
Door.
Oh, it's just the doors.
Yeah.
I see you.
The original caretaker's cottage was first constructed in 1909 as a residence for the hotel's caretaker. The cottage interior was gutted all the way down to the studs. Unnecessary walls were removed, then structural modifications such as beam supports and framed new spaces were added. Features on the first floor resemble a residential suite from 1909, which includes a parlor, dining room, sitting room, and a kitchen that is accurate to the period. The use of many reclaimed fixtures and unique architectural materials created a need to lay out rough-ins by field, measuring the materials as they arrived from around the country. Based on A&E Design's strong track record in historical renovation and preservation projects, their team was called upon to join MOA Architecture and the Stanley Hotel in its vision to make necessary lighting updates to the Caretaker's Cottage, a building located on the hotel property that has been transformed into the newest tour attraction, which will feature a replica of the bathroom featured in The Shining. The vision behind the cottage's renovation was to incorporate this property as a rentable lodging space for large groups. The Caretaker's Cottage is an integral part of the Stanley Hotel district and based on its rich history. The renovation was required to adhere to the Secretary of the Interior's standards and guidelines for the treatment of historic properties written by the National Park Service and revised in 1990. Before any renovation work had been done on the property, A&E Design conducted thorough research to ensure the light design and fixtures mirrored the authentic history of the Caretaker's Cottage and matched the design style of the period that the cottage would have been built. Through inspecting and mapping out these intentional design features such as the lighting fixture style, typical lighting fixture locations, and selecting the historic style switches, they were able to incorporate lighting into a part of the historic Stanley storyline and a part of the regular historic hotel tours. The building is 2 stories tall and features an original fireplace as a focal point on the main floor, which includes a large kitchen, living room, and library, along with an outdoor patio for guests to enjoy. To reflect the foundations of the existing and surrounding spaces, the project was approached with specific designs in mind. For instance, the space was designed with LED bulbs in a vintage style and with a warm color temperature to emulate the incandescent lamp style of the time. The main wood staircase was redesigned to its original charming character to provide access to both levels, and the second floor features 3 bedrooms, including a primary suite. Lastly, a lighting control system was provided for the hotel staff to control the lighting as needed from the main hotel reception desk. Architectural drawings were developed to ensure an authentic return to the historic significance of the Caretaker's Cottage preservation. And to transport visitors back in time, period-correct antiques and memorabilia were highlighted throughout the building. Some antiques were even discovered in spooky, surprising places, as our contractor partners uncovered several children's toys hidden in the walls. Paying homage to the iconic horror of this site, their team prioritized retaining and preserving the historical character of the building to ensure an authentic return to the historic significance of the Caretaker's Cottage. And the lighting captured the famous notion of the property. 6 special guests got the opportunity to spend a night in the Stanley Hotel's Caretaker's Cottage on Friday, September 23, 2023, making them the first people to stay in the building in over 100 years. This overnight stay took place just a few months after a $2 million renovation was completed on the cottage back in June 2022, which brought back much of the historic elements to the space along with some new, fear-inducing additions. Entering in on the first floor of the 2-story cottage, guests were greeted with a recreation of the residential space in which the original Stanley caretaker, Alfred Lambourne, lived with his family when the space was built in 1909. Complete with a living room, library, dining room, and sunroom, renovators used an early period Sears catalog, the likes of which original Stanley owner, F.O. Stanley, would have used. to furnish the suite with contemporary light fixtures, upholstery, and kitchen appliances. Stepping up to the second floor, guests were immersed in a space reminiscent of Stanley Kubrick's film adaptation of Stephen King's Stanley Hotel-inspired 1977 novel, The Shining. This recreation can clearly be seen in the floor's shining and twin suites, which mimic the original set design. The Shining suite is paired with a recreation of the room 237 bathroom, complete with old-fashioned mint green finishes and the infamous bathtub from one of the film's most haunting scenes, while the twin suite is accompanied by a bathroom envisioned as belonging to the Grady twins, the ghosts who appear in the film. 2 guests stayed in each of the cottage's 3 suites and were even given a working phone line to use for the night. Ryan Graciano, a guest who stayed in the Caretaker suite along with his wife, spoke fondly of his experience. "It was amazing the level of detail that they put into it, the little touches that were authentic to the time period," Graciano said. Aside from some rather creepy dolls found in the twin suite, Graciano said the overnight stay was a pleasure. Along with their time spent in the cottage, the 6 guests were also treated to a full slate of Stanley amenities, including a brief history of the Caretaker's cottage, dinner at the Cascades restaurant, after drinks at the 217 wine bar, breakfast and lunch at Brunch & Company, massages at Aspire Spa, a showing of 13, a theatrical seance, dinner at the Post Chicken and Beer, and a private tour of the hotel property given by Stanley owner John Cullen. The Shining-themed renovation adds to the Stanley's attempt to fashion itself as the home of Rocky Mountain horror, including a recently acquired prop axe from The Shining production, which sold at auction in for $175,000. It was then anonymously donated for display in the Stanley Film Center, a sprawling film and music entertainment complex that's been in development for years on the Stanley's property. No surprise that the hotel, which regularly hosts themed events and multi-night music performances, was named as the first of America's most haunted hotels by Trips to Discover Digital magazine. Currently, John W. Cullen is president and CEO of Grand Heritage Management LLC, the company he founded in 1989, and owner of Grand Holdings LLC, the owner of several hotels in USA, Mexico, and UK. The Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado has been and always will be Cullen's favorite hotel and passion. Between 2008 and 2017, Cullen has bought out all other ownership and invested almost $31 million in the Stanley. The deal to sell the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park to an Arizona nonprofit has faded, so the state of Colorado is stepping in with a plan to buy the hotel. The Colorado Educational and Cultural Facilities Authority, or CCFA, which helps nonprofit educational and arts groups fund capital projects, plans to take over ownership of the historic Stanley Hotel. Instead of selling to the Arizona group and taking ownership after as much as $450 million in bonds for renovating and upgrading the hotel are paid back, CCFA will create a subsidiary and become the borrower of those bonds. The hotel will continue to be operated by the Grand Heritage Hotel Group, which has owned the Stanley Hotel since the 1990s. October 15, 2015. Estes Park Stanley Hotel was the inspiration for Stephen King's novel The Shining, but it has long faced one key problem: the hedge maze that audiences saw in the iconic film version. It didn't exist. Now, 35 years later, the hotel finally has that hedge maze. Sort of. "It's a little smaller than I would have thought," remarked Earl South as he walked through the maze for the first time. "I think I had the expectation of like, boom, here's the maze, and not having to see the process of it growing in. So, probably in a year or two, it's going to be really spectacular." "That's the idea," said Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Chief Engineer Jason Schneider. "They've seen the movie and now they want to get lost in it," Schneider said. "And that's the hope that we have, is that they get lost in the Stanley. Right now, the maze's mix of Armstrong and Spartan junipers varies in height between 2 and 5 feet. Not exactly something you're going to get lost in." "Just wait, though," Schneider said. "In about 18 months, the maze is expected to reach its goal height. We're going to cap these off at about 5-6 feet tall so that it gives everybody that hidden feeling, but at the same time, You can still find your kid when you look over the edge, he said. In November 2014, the hotel announced a contest asking for maze design submissions from the public. The winning design, from New York City architect Mariam Dalarian Standing, takes visitors through a U-shaped maze that features an S on one end and an H on the other. A diagram of the winning hedge maze design by New York architect Mariam Dalarian Standing. Those out walking the maze on a recent fall morning said it's already more difficult than they expected. Even at 6 feet 4 inches tall, Earl South made a number of wrong turns. It was fun. It was fun. After the initial, oops, that's not the right way to go, I guess I better start paying attention, South said. I think once it grows in, it's gonna be amazing. So it'll be fun. Right now it's gonna be fun. It'll be great. Bring the kids out. They'll have a blast. Little girls running around. Red rum, red rum.
So you have to go back to where we came in.
Not this way.
Bill and Tim were lost.
In the hotel.
We can find our way.
I think we'll have to go back.
Are we getting close? Where are you, Tim? Bill? Here you go. I don't see a way out yet. Wait. Jim? That's not it? Is it?
Keep going. No.
No, here.
No.
Here. Here. This. Could we be close? No? Oh boy.
Keep going. We can do it. We can do it.
Oh yeah, we did it.
We did it.
From the beginning, King was unhappy with Stanley Kubrick's version of The Shining, which was filmed at the Timberline Lodge in Oregon. In the 1990s, King decided to remake the movie into a television special, with filming taking place at the Stanley Hotel. Wishing to capitalize on the opportunity, hotel management agreed to anything King wanted, including a full remodel of the lobby's decor and color scheme.
Stanley Hotel.
The room was darkened to King's specifications, including the painting of its plaster beams to look like wood. Even the grand staircase, which also appears in Dumb and Dumber during the race you to the top scene, was altered to make it appear more ominous. Personally, I think it's an improvement. Rick and Jim decided they had to ride the elevator at least once before departing the Stanley Hotel, while Bill and Tim relaxed on the leather furniture. One quick ride to the second floor and back down, then a final goodbye to a great evening at the Stanley Hotel.
How many was the 3?
Look at whatever that is. I'm sorry, that was me.
Stanley Hotel guests.
Now you can say I rode in the elevator.